just through the Bible, that's one of the key lessons I learned is be fruitful and multiply is one of the first things. Be fruitful and multiply. And to be fruitful, that means to sow seeds. That means sowing seeds in the kingdom. It means sowing seeds in different projects. It means sowing seeds in your own business and multiply.
Welcome to Conversations, a podcast from New Life Church Derby. This is a podcast we release on first Friday of every month, and a podcast focused on helping us to grow in our spiritual life, and also things like finance, parenting, marriage, business, different aspects as well. Today I'm going to sit with my friend Dwayne, and we know each other for the last 10 years, and very recently we are able to do a teaching session on finance in our church, New Life Church Derby. From there, actually, it sparked the idea of doing a podcast, and it will be helpful for those who are listening as well. So today, I just want to welcome Dwayne. So thank you for joining today. He's the owner, founder of Property Results Investment in Derby. He's a person actually moved from a very stable working environment of Rolls-Royce to a adventurous world of business and into real estate. So Dwayne, very, very warm welcome. Thank you for your time. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Fantastic. Before I had lots of questions, even on our course, a lot of people were asking about many questions. But before I move into that, I want to ask, how did you become a Christian?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So in terms of my belief in God, in Christ, it stemmed from, I was born and raised as a Catholic. So went to primary school, that was Catholic, secondary school, and then sixth form. So it was effectively there that had a foundation in God and Christ instilled through religion. But in terms of like my faith as today and how it's grown, really it came from like me going to university. So, when you go to university, you step out and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm free. So I was raised in London, and the university was in Durham, so miles apart, like literally take you 6-7 hours just to drive there. So it was a new world, and when you go to university, you just enjoy yourself in that sense in terms of the world. But then it was in my end of my first year, one of my friends who, we used to hang out a lot, but one thing that he used to do, he used to go to church a lot. And I remember there was something that was calling me to go to church. And then he invited me, I'd go on a regular basis, and then kind of stopped when I moved. So for my third year, I moved down to Derby for my internship. So it was a 1-year long placement. And then it was during that period, again, I was like, saw a friend, and they said they were going to go to a church event. And then, but the funny thing about it was earlier that day, it was like, there was something in my spirit that was like, you need to go to church, you need to be reconnecting with God. And then he told me about it. I said, I'm going to come along. And then that same night, I just gave my life to God. So yeah, I think that's really where it stemmed from. And I think that's, it's helped me in terms of, we were brought up in a Catholic background, but then I would say it was more based upon practice and habit and not necessarily understanding the word, understanding Christ, having that spiritual relationship. But it was effectively from university that grew.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dwayne, for sharing that. And I believe New Life Church Derby has played a role in shaping your journey to become a Christian.
100%.
When I meet you, I remember 10 years ago, you were actually working for Rolls-Royce. You just started. Every time I hear you get a promotion or move into the next level. And one day you were saying that you're going to resign from Rolls-Royce and get into a business. Even while you were working Rolls-Royce, you have a business somewhere in North. So tell us more about it. What was the defining moment you decided, okay, I'm going to stop here. There's a limit I can reach in Rolls-Royce. But if I move into business, maybe sky is a limit. I'm going to move into that. When did that happen?
Yeah. Well, to kind of give you context, so our family, they had businesses. So when my dad came over from the Caribbean, he came over literally nothing, and then he created his own businesses. So, and then when my father unfortunately passed away, my brother took over. So it's always been there, is entrepreneurial side, business side in the family. And in terms of going from Rolls-Royce to my own business, it was something that I always thought I would do. So even when I was working through Rolls-Royce and going through the career ladder, the funny thing is people say to me, oh, you need to do a promotion. Now I'm like, why do I want to do a promotion? It's going to be more responsibility for hardly not as much pay increase. And I was like, oh, what's the point? But then I would say I was pulled more through the process, and I had some good people around me to guide me through it. Always through those stages, I always thought I'd want to do my own business and really do that at a full-time level. What helped me go into working at Rolls-Royce first was, I remember it was actually during my placement that one of the senior executives came to me and we were just talking, and I remember him saying, whatever you do, Rolls-Royce is a really good foundation to learn no matter what you do. And we weren't even talking about business or anything like that. We were just talking in general. That sort of seed in my mind, which was actually, in terms of Rolls-Royce or the corporate world, you're actually getting free training, free understanding to develop certain skills that you wouldn't necessarily learn straight away in business. I remember my last placement at Rolls-Royce was all about operations and processes. And I used to think, oh my gosh, I'm not a process person. I hate it. I used to run away from it. But then now in our business with people, processes are super important. So to kind of answer your question, it was something I always planned to do.
Fine. So you're saying the business element is actually running in your family line, in your blood. There is business, and you always want to do. And I like what you just said. One thing about you may not learn all the process of business in straight away when you start as a business, but going to a company like a Rolls-Royce and learning the processes, systems has really helped you when it for your time come to set up business. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I think, we're in a new world where entrepreneurship is pushed, and some people say, well, why should I even work in the corporate world? But I think there's a lot of really great skills that you learn. And even now in different areas, even when it's negotiations or sales or people, I all revert back to the key things I learned at Rolls-Royce. In the team meetings, I have my team meeting this week, where we're pushing and urging to get to another level because we need that based upon the capacity that we need to drive for. I remember even quoting words from my old manager and what they were saying to me to extend me to get to another level. So there's just a really good foundation that I learned for sure.
I see. I like that. Not to just see as a place to make a lot of money from Rolls-Royce, seeing or treating these kind of or working in a multinational corporation as a training ground for whatever you want to do for the
100%.
next level. That's amazing, wonderful. I want to ask. Many people want to go into business or do an entrepreneur, or people has many ideas, but the problem is they all are kind of stuck in a 9 to 5 job, a well-paid job. If I ask you, what is the process, or how can a person can transition from an employment to the world of business?
So I think the first question is, do you want to do business? There's two types of business people. There's intrapreneurs and there's entrepreneurs. So it's in the start of the letters or the start of the words. You got intra. Within Rolls-Royce, even then, I remember there were people saying, oh, you've got this. And they were joking, but to be fair, I don't really mind. Del boy attitude. So it was as if I wouldn't just take the norm. I would look to find ways to make it better. Or if I was negotiating, so I was in procurement supply chain when I first started, I wasn't just negotiating for the company. I saw this is my company, this is my business. I want to negotiate accordingly. So I think the first thing is you don't necessarily need to leave your career, your corporate world. There's opportunities in the current business. But if you do want to explore business, that rather than jumping ship, do it on the side. And in today's world, you can do it. I know there's a lot more hours and pressures at work, but there's the way I delved in was, well, at home, I'd finish work roughly around 5 or 6 o'clock. And you had two options when it came to mobile phones and communications. You could either go for latest iPhone, or you could go for an old Nokia mobile phone, right? Where the only thing you could do is text and phone. I made sure I got the latter. Why? Because if I got the iPhone, I was always going to have to be engaged. Always have to be engaged. Whilst if I had this phone, I could say, oh, the battery died. Oh, this and that. Because I needed to create that clear distinction of 6 o'clock, I'm finishing, and then I'll get home, and from 7 till 9, 10, whatever time, that's when I was working in the business. And then on the weekends, you work in the business. And I think that it's Moore's law, which is we utilize the amount of time we have. So Moore's law effectively indicates that whatever constraint or time or resource we have, we'll utilize that. So if we only have 3 or 4 hours to work, we'll make sure we're very, very productive in that time. So that's how it was when I first got started. And that's what I would encourage anyone that wanted to explore business. Just do it on the side initially, because if you look at the stats, not a lot of businesses survive the first few years. So your career actually helps sustain that. So even if your first business or your second business or your third business doesn't work as well, you've got that backup plan.
Yeah, that's interesting. Instead of jumping everything and like a faith step, like people say, close everything and jump into the water. How long you work like that? Been working Rolls-Royce and keeping that time schedule, and also keeping the other business on the side. And then when the time comes, you shift things around. That's very interesting. How long you did that before you really said, okay, resigning from Rolls-Royce, now I'm going fully into it?
So in terms of, I was doing it for 6-7 years. And the good thing that I had, and probably going back to your earlier question, was I had a business partner. So I'm based in Derby, but the area that we would invest and work and operate from is in Northeast. So the distance is roughly 2 hours. So could I be there every single day? No, because the time just wouldn't permit. But by having support, having a business partner, they effectively allowed me to work at areas that I would have strengths in, and they worked at the areas that made them strong, or their strengths, so I say. So that there was that element of partnership there. And then, so I was doing it for 7 years, and that helped me. I was able to sustain that through that partnership. And then going forward, what made me make that jump was you get to that point where well, for me, it was career and finance versus like seeing what I could do. And to get to that next level, it required me to go full time, because I had the opportunity to expand the business by acquiring another business. And that business was already fully fledged, making good revenue, but to work in it, it needed me to go full time in that. So when I was getting to that vision point, it was one where in my mind, I was saying to myself, okay, I can do this and try it for the next 2-3 years. And if it doesn't fail, I know I can always go back. Or over the next 2 or 3 years, I could stay at Rolls-Royce or stay in my corporate world, and I would always be thinking, what if? But the key thing I would always say from what I've just shared is the business was already operating. We had the other business as well. So there was good income come from those. So it was more of a strategic step out rather than just gun-ho approach per se.
If I'm right, from looking from outside, we think, okay, it was like a faith step. You resigned everything and jump into it. But actually, in your shoe, it was not really a jump, a step of a faith. You know what's coming from your business, and you know where you can maximize it, and fully, almost, let's say 80% sure this is what you're gonna do. In case if you didn't work it out, you can always go back. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. It was step down in income for sure, because you're taking on the business and you just don't know what the future will be like. But I think that's a good thing, because you learn to live within certain constraints. And with business, you have ups, you have downs, and it's actually through those downs that you learn to become stronger. Then it helps you through the ups. But yeah, what you shared definitely spot on. It was strategic, but then there was an element of faith which is like, well, God's got me, we'll go forward. And one of the key things that I always say to myself, well, if God is for me, who can be against me? If God is for me, who can be against me? Yeah. And that's something I've always revert to. Anytime I'm finding challenges, it's that light at the end of the tunnel, which is, if God is for me, who can be against me? And so there was strategy, there was prayers, but there was the faith of, okay, if it doesn't work out, I could always revert back or go to another job and start again at some point in the future.
Very good. Excellent. Dwayne, if I ask you, I remember you were speaking about keeping, while you're working in a secular, in your Rolls-Royce job, you were keeping things like 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, from 6 to your work, and using your Nokia mobile to keep yourself, anchored, or like a time management. And also you talk about Moses' law as well. What are the tools used for productivity? How do you manage your time? Obviously, when you're in charge of the whole schedule and also owning a business, life can be everywhere and it can take the whole of your life. Now I've seen you got married, you have a son, now you serve in the church. How do you manage it in the right balance, and what are the productivity tools you use? Are you still using the Nokia 6640 or something?
Can't get away with it now. It's a great question, and to be fair, it's challenging. But in terms of the tools and frameworks, I think the key thing is compartmentalization, or managing, or working in blocks, as one of my coaches says to me. So Sunday is always a day that I would just take off, first of all, because when you look at it, you need to recuperate, you need to rejuvenate spiritually, physically. I think Sunday is a great opportunity to do that. So before, I used to actually work on a Sunday, but I would find that be a couple of months or 6 months that I feel like I've burnt out. So, but Sunday was helped me just reset. And then on top of that, one thing I've, especially last 6 to 12 months, is in business or career, I'd always see it as you're going up, you need to be, as you're creating more space around you, be that through having more team members, that your time is still going to be under a lot of pressure. But the key thing there is just to put more structure around it. How I do is I break my day up into like 2 blocks. So you have AM and PM. AM for me is more mental work. So this would probably be relevant if you're on your own business, or maybe even if you're in a career or corporate world. But mornings, if someone calls me or messages me, I tend not to answer. I might see it, but a lot of that is just blocking out all distractions, even if I can do it for 2-3 hours, to focus on like deep work. And that deep work could be and analyzing something. It could be working on a certain marketing campaign. It could be working on a certain deal of some sort. So mornings are broken up into that. And then the AM session is where it's like, okay, hit me with it. Maybe it's meetings, maybe it's calls, maybe it's whatever. And that's when I just say it's like back to back. But I structure it that way because in the morning, I find my energy levels are at the highest. And by the time I get to midday, that's when I see myself slipping off. And then, but by being pulled left, right, and center, your energy levels have to be maintained at a certain level. I would also say the key thing is exercise, real exercise. So even if you're just going for a walk or hitting the gym, like I mentioned earlier on, my energy levels drop by midday. But if I go to the gym, straight away they jump up and my endorphins kick in that allow me to have another 2, 3, 4 hours worth of solid work. And that again helps with like being productive. So that kind of is more practical. Now behind the scenes, there's 2 tools that I use to organize myself and know what to do. And one is what I call like an end of week review. So in that end of week review, I'm assessing myself by effectively 5 or 6 pillars of life. So one is finances, one is social, one is hobbies and entertainment, one is spiritual, another one is friends and family, etc. So there's these 6 buckets that I revert to, and I just score myself from 0 to 10. And through that scoring system, I can see, well, what are the areas that I need to focus on in the week coming? So if I had a lack of time with my wife and my family, okay, I need to put a bit more time and effort into doing that. Maybe we need to go out or so. And if it's, for example, I haven't looked at our finances for a number of weeks, well, that score is going to be low. I need to get back onto it. Okay. And then, so that's the end of week review. I also, in that review, I look at, well, what was the big 4 or 5 goals that I had for that month? or projects. And then during that end of week review, I'm looking at, well, how much progress have I achieved to that? And then on top of that, I think, well, okay, what do I need to do this specific week to then move that project or go forward? So those are tips that I do. And then in terms of, I would say, as I was speaking, something came to mind that I also do, which is with family. I've always got Sunday off, but every other Saturday, so a minimum of twice a month, I will only work on a Saturday from in the morning from 8 till midday. After that, it's just family time. So again, I'm just trying to create more structure where you can get a bit more work done, but you're also not neglecting the family too.
Fantastic, excellent. It's like to see that breakings, and also the aware of your energy and PM. How do you balance it? So Nokia is out of the no more Nokias, but more balanced structure in place.
Yeah, dude,
Fantastic.
the funny thing is, a couple of weeks ago, I was saying to my wife, I need to get a second phone. So then the current phone I have, I will literally just use that for work so that I could switch it off and then get another phone where I only keep it to a few close friends. Because that phone trick really helped me for sure.
I see, definitely. Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Dwayne, for that. So now you are in the property business and you buy property, sell property, especially, particularly in the north. But many people, even from our church, who just moved to UK, would like to buy their own house. What are the processes they should do? A simple process, if you can mention that.
Yeah, so in terms of saving for the property or for buying the property?
Buying the property.
So I think it's quite simple. Well, in terms of a simple structure, it will just be, first of all, understand what your budget is. And if you don't own property, you get the benefit of first-time home buyers mortgage. So you only need to put 5 or 10% down. So if you can just save that 5 or 10%, as well as a few extra thousand on the side, just for legals and stuff like that, with, I would say, 10, 15, 20,000, you could be getting onto the property ladder. And one of the key things I mentioned to a lot of people who are first-time buyers is, especially if you are a bit younger, don't necessarily aim for getting, I would say, the best looking house, but not a great area. So, you could be you might say, I'm going to go for a semi-detached house, but the area might not be a great area. And I would say more go for a decent property, but in a better location, especially where you know that people will continually rent it. Because what you find is, if you want to start getting on the property ladder and maybe buy 1 or 2 properties, you may just want to do it through buying your first house in a good area where you know it's going to rent well, and then you go up the ladder, but you keep that property, and you know that's a property that can rent really well, and you won't have any challenges there. So I think keeping it simple is save up, get yourself connected with the right type of team, so mortgage brokers, valuers, and a good builder where you can, and then just think strategically as to where you buy that property, the first property that you have.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to ask, that's the one thing about buy their own property, but let's say if somebody has got a property for living for some time, but now they have some extra cash, they are producing a bit more, and they want to go into the property business. Because I know your business is in real estate, you buy, you rent it out, and a lot of things you do. So why did you went into real estate, and why should people consider real estate as a business option, and what are the steps they could do if they like to go into real estate?
Yeah, well, in terms of real estate, my passion's always been in it, and that stems from family. And then just, when you look at a property, and whilst every other person is getting scared or saying, well, this is not something for me, I'm excited by that. And I see that all the time, properties where it's got structural issues, or maybe it's been ripped out and it just looks like a carcass. I absolutely love that. Now, in terms of if you've got some extra capital you want to invest, why property is a good avenue to go down, it's really, really fundamental to all wealth building and wealth preservation. So if you look at having a lot of successful people, be it if they've got a really successful business outside of property, they will always use property as a store of wealth. If you look at since 1970s to now, you know, the value of the pound has decreased, but good hedge against the depreciation of money is property. And over that same period, properties way outperformed currencies or the devaluation of your pound. So whilst the value of money has gone down, let's just say by several factors, you know, property's gone up by higher. So not only is it storing the value of your money, but you're also going to be building a wealth on that. When you look at, you've got, being a diversified investor, you might invest in stocks and shares, and you'll also invest in property. But stocks and shares will generally create you a 10 to 12% return, whilst property with the right type of structure will generate you 12 to 15 to 18% when you look over a good window of period of time. So, you know, outperform stocks, but also it's a hard physical asset. So unlike stocks where, you know, overnight it might lose value, or over a period of time, property typically won't lose that much value over a short period of time, but it's physical there. And we're in the UK where we've got a shortage of land. And when you look back and you look at the UK, one of the big attractions to investors here, as well as internationally, is the property market. So we know we've got loads of buyers, the shortage of houses. So the store of the price of the property, the value of the property is always going to be maintained over the long term.
Excellent. That was a good case for somebody to get into the property market. What are the common mistakes people might make when they go into property markets? What are the things? Because some people hear, oh, the tenant is not paying properly, or, you know, some people ruin the properties. Some people even grow drugs in a rented property. I see a lot of crazy stories. Do you have any experiences like that? How do you mitigate against those kind of challenges?
No, it's a good question. So I think it's going in with your eyes wide open, knowing what you're getting into. So one of the mistakes people make are, firstly, just basing it off price. And price is relative to area. So I invest in Northeast, which is a really affordable location, and prices are far lower than, for example, London. So there's actually a lot of investors from down south that like to invest in London. But if you really just look at like Northeast as an example, there's properties that you can buy for 15, 20, 30,000 pounds. And you look at it and you think, whoa, so I could get a house for the same price as my car. Why not? Let's invest. But it's the key thing is to know what you're getting into. So where you talk about examples of, I guess, like challenging tenants, they're typically going to be in properties that aren't in the best locations, and they attract those type of tenants. And the example that I was mentioning, like properties at 20, 30, 35,000, they can absolutely work, right? But they work for the right type of investor. So the right type of investor is, they won't just buy one, they're buying several. So when we go back to, again, wealth building and portfolio building, it's all about diversification. And so if you're buying one property in a challenging area, then the risk is multiplied because it's a single point of failure. But if you buy several of them, we know all regions have bad areas, but you mitigate that risk through multiplication of properties. But obviously, you don't necessarily have the wealth to do that or the money to do that. So then going back to your question, the mistake is just going with your eyes wide open, realizing, okay, I'm buying in an area that's challenging. I should expect that. So as a new investor, I would say go in and buy in an area where it's more stable, where there's growth, where you can appeal to the right type of tenants. They're not always city center locations. Because I mentioned that because I was just on a call with a client and they were like, oh, I want to invest in the city center. And I was like, well, in this particular area they're looking at, the city center is not a great location. It's actually further out. People work there, but they live further out. And the wrong type of tenants live in the city center in this particular example. So know what you're getting into and have the right team around you especially when you're not investing local to yourself. So that's going to be having, especially like a good property manager, a good mortgage advisor. These are all nuances that can really tip the scales either in your favor or away from you. Like, for example, a good property manager will make sure that they're getting you the right type of tenant. They vetted them. They made sure that, they visited their property, where they're coming from, to make sure that they hold good standards. Take, for example, mortgage broker. Like, we have a client now, it's his first time buying. He's based in London, and he's a business owner, first time owner, and first time landlord. It's more challenging for him to get a property, but through the right type of power team or contacts, he's swimming through that quite well. And I would say, just to wrap up, because I know that question is just multifaceted. So just to kind of wrap it up, I would say one of the biggest challenges mistakes people have is just investing close to themselves or local to themselves. They say, well, let me invest because in my local area, because it's 5 minutes down the road or 10 minutes down the road or 20 minutes down the road. But why are you investing is the question. Are you investing to have a second job, or are you investing to be an investor? So with your stocks and shares, if you invest in stocks and shares, tell me, when was the last time you went and visited that shop or that business? Probably never. It's the same type of mindset with property. Do you think large institutional pension funds and banks who invest in property go and visit each and every property? No. They look at it and say, well, is this a good area that I want to invest in? Great. And then I have a team around me that's going to manage it. Because we can get into this zone of, it feels comfortable that it's round the corner. But then it does turn into a job, because the tenant's always calling you saying, oh, this and that. And you could be on holiday. You could be in the middle of a great dream, and that's been disturbed by a tenant calling up saying, hey, I just wanted to have a chat. And you're like, what? Have a chat? I just want to sleep. What's going on here? So I'd say that's it. Just, I guess, feeling too comfortable to invest where you are.
I see. It is, I understand now, it is the importance of placing the right structures in place, having the right team around you, and all of that. Fantastic. I think property is something really lit your fire. We could go on and on.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do another one. We can talk more about this property and how the market trend and how things will flow. But I want to ask before we wind up. Bible talks about stewardship, giving, generosity, and all that. I want to ask the principles of Bible, how it really impacted you as an entrepreneur, or what are the things really shaped your vision regarding finance?
Yeah, I think so in terms of tithing, offerings, I think business is a really good generator of cash and wealth, and it's an opportunity to reinvest back into the kingdom of God. So, if there's projects that you can invest in, you've got the finances investing it there. So I think and it comes from a mindset of abundance. When you read the Bible, it's actually all about abundance and generosity. And one of the limitations we can have, and especially in today's world where, we could be working long hours, but with a shortage of returns, we can feel, let me hold back. But actually there's a principle, there's a spirit of, by giving, you get back. Like even Jesus, when, with the disciples, he was like, pay your taxes and abundantly pay it. So pay it from a place of abundance. It sets you up because that also attracts the right opportunities. And I feel like just through the Bible, that's one of the key lessons I learned is be fruitful and multiply is one of the first things. Be fruitful and multiply. And to be fruitful, that means to sow seeds. That means sowing seeds in the kingdom. It means sowing seeds in different projects. It means sowing seeds in your own business. And multiply. You can't multiply if you don't sow seeds. And you can't multiply if you don't give and offer. You would only be contracting, because if you're not sowing seeds, you're not giving back. And naturally you're contracting, you're effectively dying over a period of time. But by giving back and sowing seeds, you're growing and moving forward. What
are the biblical principles to wealth building in a practical way?
Yeah, so from biblical, we've probably heard it before, which is this Malachi, which is like, give and just test me. Test if I won't give back. And, there was a book I read many years ago, and I forget the title, but the book was indicating that actually what you should do is start keeping a diary. And I started doing this, diary of when you give and how much you return. And you start realizing where money comes from unexpected places. So God is saying, you can even see it, and God never changes from the old and new. He said, test me and you'll get that. And you'll never, he says, test me and I will show you. I will prove that I will give back in abundance.
Excellent. Thank you. So I would like to ask you, mentioned about books. I know you read in a wide variety of books. So I wonder what kind of books you has really shaped you in terms of finance, in terms of entrepreneurship, or even personal discipline as well. What are the books really influenced you and really shaped you, which maybe a few of them, if you could recommend?
Yeah, so there's several that impacted me. And I'll say, like, in terms of business, the book that really helped me get structured, because with business, it can feel like there's so many things to do. So one of the books that's really helped me, especially when I'm starting out, is called Traction. So Traction really gives business owners a mindset of corporate world. And what I mean by that is, in the corporate world, it's all about structure. It's all about processes and where do you tweak and optimize. Whilst, when you look at entrepreneurship, it seems like it's just going from left, right, and center, hustling, etc. But Traction gives you scope to know, okay, build something around you and focus on creating a clear vision, creating processes, how to score and motivate people, how to track your business on a monthly, daily, weekly basis. And by doing that, you start realizing where's the gaps. Because for business, for me, is like, because I come from working at Rolls-Royce manufacturing, it's like a shop floor. It's like a factory. There's certain constraints within there. And all you need to do is release the constraint, optimize here, and then you get better improvement. So Traction is a really good book. In terms of productivity and thinking, and I think this is no matter what area, whether you're on your own business, looking to get to business, or in career, is the one thing. And that is by Gary Keller. And the one thing is, it's probably 200 or 300 pages, but it's just one sentence that you need to say to yourself. What's the one thing that I need to do that by doing it, nothing else is needed, or allows me to just do that one thing over everything else? So what it's getting you to think is, when we wake up, it seems like, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do this, right? And that's no matter what. But what's the one thing that if I do it, it means that I become even more productive. So it's making you take very critical and strategic decisions. And then you might have heard of it, Eat That Frog.
Eat That Frog.
Have you heard of that? Yeah, so that was one of the first books. I remember I was in my accountancy. I got into my accountant's firm and they just gave away books and it had a good title. And that one was good because it was just saying, look, break down key projects. Don't keep putting things off. Start with the hardest task first and everything becomes easier. And then obviously the Bible for me, you just, by the word, reading in it, it's got principles no matter what, whether you're sick, you need healing, whether you need guidance in terms of finances, how to conduct yourself. The Bible is really important and really has helped me in several areas.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that list. So the one final question I want to ask is, it's very important, our relationship with God. I want to ask, how do you keep God at the center of your decisions? With the family, with the demanding business which is growing, all of it, how do you do on a day-to-day basis? And is there any spiritual disciplines you follow, or do you have something as a family you do? Tell us about it.
Yeah, I think, the saying, no man is an island. And I think that's how I see it with keeping myself accountable. So, I've got principles in terms of waking up, reading the word, and by going to church on Sunday. But I think Sunday is just the start of things. I think it's all about nurturing that relationship throughout and giving thanks to God. When something's great, even when something's not, just giving thanks and just saying, I know it's going to be better. And then, especially during COVID, we realized how important this was, which was having a family unit around you. And I call it family for a reason because, you've got your own family, your immediate family, but we have obviously home churches. And whilst I really appreciate going to church on Sunday, the building, you get to say hello, goodbye, but you only get to connect with a small fraction of people. But by having home church, you get to delve in deeper, connect with people on a really deep level, really go for the word. It was even just on the weekend, there was a couple in our church, and they said, you know what, we're pregnant, we're due to have a baby in a few months. And I was thinking, amazing, and you're like enjoying it and you're celebrating together. And I think when we revert back to accountability to God and keeping the faith in God and how you conduct yourself, just about living it on a day-to-day basis. And we're humans, there's challenges, but you have the word, you have your home family, and just trying to make sure that daily just implementing it on a regular basis.
Excellent. Thank you, Dwayne, for that. And I would like to call a pause for now. Maybe we'll meet for another time to discuss further about real estate and also stock market as well. I know we haven't covered everything we did on our finance course as well. So there is more to dig it in. But I want to ask, is there any final thoughts you like to give regarding finance and business? To a final thoughts for people. Anything comes to mind, now is the time.
Yeah, I think, and it goes back to what's one of the books I'd recommend or has moved me. If you've ever heard me speak before, but one of the books was the biggest regrets of the dying, 5 biggest regrets of the dying. And it's a super emotive and reflective book because it was a practitioner who was working in a hospice, and they'd interviewed around 1,200 or 12,000 patients. So, they're months, days away from passing away. And through conducting interviews, the author was able to discern that there was around five key regrets that people had. And when I looked at it, the number one thing was not living a life that you wanted, but living a life that others wanted. So what does that mean? So when you asked me, it seemed like a shock from nowhere that you were moving from comfortable job to working for yourself. Well, that saying, that reason resonated with me, because I always say, and I share this with others, you don't want to be on your deathbed or close to dying and you think, wow, what's the regrets I had? Why did I not do this? And that could be spiritually, it could be working in ministry, it could be family, it could be, in terms of, why did I not forgive that person? Why did I not hug our loved one a bit more? It's those regrets that were the most important. It wasn't, I should have got more money, I should have done this. It was, did I become the best person, the best version that God presented me to be? And it goes back again to the first saying, be fruitful and multiply. Be fruitful and multiply. And I see that as we're all in the world we're all in the world and we've got this potential, and it's about meeting that potential as much as you can, become the best version you can.
Thank you very much, Dwayne, for this precious time you have given us. So I'll see you maybe another time. Another podcast, we could maybe take it a bit more deeper into these areas as well. Thank you once again. God bless.
See you later.